What if I told you that 99% of entrepreneurs are asking the wrong question? They're obsessed with, how can I be 10% better, when they should be asking something far more dangerous. A question so powerful that Peter Thiel uses it to filter exceptional minds from the merely talented. A question that built PayPal, funded Facebook, and created the legendary PayPal Mafia. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? Sounds simple, right? It's actually the hardest question you'll ever answer. And in the next 60 minutes, you'll discover why this question holds the key to building billion-dollar companies, why competition is for losers, and how to go from 0 to 1 in a world obsessed with copying. But first, let me tell you about 6 young men who would change the world. Lesson 1, 0 creates everything. 4 of them had built bombs in high school. 3 had escaped communist countries. 1 was planning to freeze himself after death. These were the founders of PayPal. Not exactly your typical Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, but here's what made them different. They understood something 99% of business people miss. Every moment in business happens only once. The next Bill Gates will not build an operating system. The next Larry Page won't make a search engine. The next Mark Zuckerberg won't create a social network. If you are copying these guys, you aren't learning from them. This is the difference between going from 0 to 1 versus going from 1 to N. Let me paint you a picture. You have a typewriter. If you build 100 more typewriters, you've made horizontal progress, 1 to N. But if you build a word processor, that's vertical progress, 0 to 1. That's creation. That's technology. China embodies 1 to N thinking perfectly. Their 20-year plan, become like the United States. They're copying everything. 19th century railroads, 20th century air conditioning, even entire cities. They might skip steps, going straight to wireless without landlines, but they're copying all the same. And here's the terrifying truth. Globalization without technology is a path to disaster. If China doubles its energy production, it doubles its air pollution. If India's hundreds of millions live like Americans using only today's tools, the environmental result would be catastrophic. The act of creation is singular. The moment of creation is singular. The result is something fresh and strange. Technology is miraculous because it allows us to do more with less. Other animals build the same dams and honeycombs instinctively. Only humans can invent new things and better ways of making them. Unless you invest in the difficult task of creating new things, you will fail in the future no matter how big your profits remain today. Today's best practices lead to dead ends. The best paths are new and untried. Lesson 2. Competition destroys profits. Let me tell you about 2 businesses. One serves millions of customers, creates billions in value, employs thousands of people. The other serves a few thousand customers with a handful of employees. Which would you rather own? The first is the U.S. airline industry. In 2012, they served millions of passengers and created $160 billion in value. Average profit per passenger, 37 cents. The second is Google. Same year, $50 billion in revenue, but they kept 21% as profit, 100 times the airline industry's margin. Google is now worth 3 times more than every U.S. airline combined. What's the difference? Competition. And here's the truth that will offend every economist. Capitalism and competition are opposites. Let that sink in. We've been taught they go together like peanut butter and jelly, but capitalism is premised on the accumulation of capital. Under perfect competition, all profits get competed away. Think about restaurants in Mountain View. Dozens of options, all fighting for the same customers. They put grandma at the register and kids washing dishes just to survive. Even Michelin-starred restaurants face brutal competition. French chef Bernard Loiseau said, "If I lose a star, I will commit suicide." Michelin maintained his rating, but he killed himself anyway when another guide downgraded him. Competition makes people crazy. It makes them ruthless. It makes them focus on today's margins instead of tomorrow's innovations. Now look at Google. Since it doesn't have to worry about competing with anyone, it has wider latitude to care about its workers, its products, its impact on the world. Don't be evil isn't just branding. It's what you can afford to think about when you're not fighting for survival. In business, money is either an important thing or it is everything. Monopolists can afford to think about things other than making money. Non-monopolists can't. Only one thing allows a business to transcend the daily brute struggle for survival: monopoly profits. If you want to create and capture lasting value, don't build an undifferentiated commodity business. Build a monopoly. Lesson 3. Monopoly powers progress. But wait, you're thinking, aren't monopolies evil? Don't they exploit customers and stifle innovation? That's true, but only in a static world where nothing changes. In a static world, a monopolist is just a rent collector, jacking up prices because customers have no choice. But we don't live in a static world. We live in a dynamic world where it's possible to invent new and better things. Creative monopolies give customers more choices by adding entirely new categories of abundance to the world. Creative monopolies aren't just good for society, they're powerful engines for making it better. Look at Apple's iPhone monopoly. They charge high prices, sure, but they earn those profits by creating greater abundance, not artificial scarcity. Customers were thrilled to finally have a smartphone that actually worked. Apple's monopoly profits were the reward for creating value, not extracting it. And here's what the anti-monopoly crusaders miss. Monopolies drive progress because the promise of years or even decades of monopoly profits provides a powerful incentive to innovate. Then monopolies can keep innovating because profits enable them to make long-term plans and finance ambitious research projects that firms locked in competition can't dream of. AT&T had a monopoly on phone service for most of the 20th century. Now, anyone can get a cheap cell phone plan from any number of providers. IBM's hardware monopoly of the 60s and 70s was overtaken by Microsoft's software monopoly. Then, Apple's iOS destroyed Microsoft's decades-long dominance. The history of progress is a history of better monopoly businesses replacing incumbents. Old monopolies don't strangle innovation. New monopolies drive it. So, why are economists obsessed with competition as an ideal state? It's a relic of history. They copied their mathematics from 19th century physics, seeing businesses as interchangeable atoms, not unique creators. Their theories describe equilibrium because that's what's easy to model, not because it represents the best of business. But remember what equilibrium means in physics: heat death of the universe. Everything comes to rest. In business, equilibrium means stasis, and stasis means death. Monopoly is the condition of every successful business. Lesson: FAR, last mover. Wins: everyone talks about first mover advantage. It's one of those ideas that sounds so logical it must be true. Get there first, grab the market, defend your position, right? Wrong. Being first is a tactic, not a goal. What really matters is generating cash flows in the future. Being the first mover doesn't do you any good if someone else comes along and unseats you. It's much better to be the last mover, to make the last great development in a specific market and enjoy years or even decades of monopoly profits. How do you do that? Start small and scale up. Look at Amazon. Jeff Bezos' founding vision was to dominate all of online retail. But he very deliberately started with books. Why books? Millions of titles to catalog, all roughly the same shape, easy to ship. And the most rarely sold books, those least profitable for any retail store to stock, drew the most enthusiastic customers. Amazon became the dominant solution for anyone far from a bookstore or seeking something unusual. Then they had two options: expand the number of people who read books or expand to adjacent markets. They chose the latter: CDs, videos, software. Amazon continued adding categories gradually until it had become the world's general store. The name itself brilliantly encapsulated the scaling strategy. The biodiversity of the Amazon rainforest reflected their goal of cataloging every book in the world. Now it stands for every kind of thing in the world, period. eBay did the same thing, started with Beanie Baby obsessives, a tiny, intense market they could dominate. Once they monopolized the Beanie Baby trade, they didn't jump straight to cars or industrial equipment. They expanded to small-time hobbyists, then gradually became the marketplace for everything. PayPal? We started by dominating eBay power sellers, just 20,000 people. But they desperately needed our product because eBay's own payment solution was terrible. Once we became the payment platform for eBay, there was no catching up. The perfect target market for a startup is a small group of particular people concentrated together and served by few or no competitors. Any big market is a bad choice, and a big market already served by competing companies is even worse. Start small, monopolize, then scale to adjacent markets, make the last great development. Ted Kaczynski, yes, the Unabomber, was a child prodigy who enrolled at Harvard at 16, got a PhD in math, and became a Berkeley professor. Brilliant guy. Also completely insane, but his manifesto contains one eerily lucid insight about modern society. Kaczynski argued that people need goals requiring effort, and they need to succeed in attaining at least some of those goals. He divided human goals into 3 types: goals satisfied with minimal effort, goals satisfied with serious effort, goals that cannot be satisfied, no matter how much effort. This is the classic trichotomy: the easy, the hard, and the impossible. Here's where Kaczynski's insight gets chilling. He argued modern people are depressed because all the world's hard problems have already been solved. What's left is either easy or impossible, and pursuing those tasks is deeply unsatisfying. What you can do, even a child can do. What you can't do, even Einstein couldn't have done. His solution was insane: destroy civilization and start over. But his diagnosis explains why so many people have given up looking for secrets. Consider 4 social trends conspiring to kill belief in secrets. First, incrementalism. From an early age, we're taught to proceed one tiny step at a time. If you learn something that's not on the test, you won't receive credit. But in exchange for doing exactly what's asked, just a bit better than your peers, you'll get an A. Second, risk aversion. People are scared of secrets because they're scared of being wrong. By definition, a secret hasn't been vetted by the mainstream. The prospect of being lonely but right, dedicating your life to something no one else believes in, is already hard. The prospect of being lonely and wrong can be unbearable. Third, complacency. Social elites have the most freedom and ability to explore new thinking, but they seem to believe in secrets the least. Why search for a new secret if you can comfortably collect rents on everything already done? Every fall, deans at top schools welcome incoming students with the same implicit message: you got in, your worries are over, you're set for life. Fourth, flatness. As globalization advances, people perceive the world as one homogeneous marketplace. Given that assumption, anyone ambitious enough to look for a secret will first ask, if it were possible to discover something new, wouldn't someone from the faceless global talent pool of smarter people have found it already? The result? HP, once the garage startup that symbolized innovation, stopped inventing things. Board members argued about accounting procedures instead of new technologies. The company that created the first affordable color printer and the first all-in-one printer fax copier was reduced to corporate espionage and wiretapping scandals. But secrets are still everywhere. Before Airbnb, travelers had little choice but to pay high prices for hotels. Property owners couldn't easily rent unoccupied space. Airbnb saw untapped supply and unaddressed demand where others saw nothing at all. The same pattern repeats. Uber, Lyft, Facebook. If insights that look so elementary in retrospect can support billion-dollar businesses, there must remain many great companies still to start. The best place to look for secrets is where no one else is looking. Most of us live in a normal world. We expect normal distributions, bell curves where most things cluster around average. But that's not how the universe actually works. The universe operates on power laws, where small differences in input lead to massive differences in output. In venture capital, this truth is brutal and undeniable. I've invested in hundreds of startups. Want to know the dirty secret? The best investment in a successful fund equals or outperforms the entire rest of the fund combined. At Founders Fund, Facebook, our best 2005 investment, returned more than everything else combined. Palantir, the second best investment, will return more than everything except Facebook. This pattern repeats in every fund. It's not a bug, it's a feature of reality. This leads to 2 strange rules for VCs. Only invest in companies that have the potential to return the value of the entire fund. Because rule number 1 is so restrictive, there can't be any other rules. When Andreessen Horowitz invested $250,000 in Instagram and sold for $78 million 2 years later, they celebrated a 312x return. Amazing, right? Actually, no. With a $1.5 billion fund, they'd need 19 Instagrams just to break even. That's why VCs need to find the handful of companies that will go from to 1 and back them with everything. But here's what most people miss. The power law isn't just about investing, it's about life. An entrepreneur makes a major investment just by spending her time working on a startup. Every individual is unavoidably an investor. When you choose a career, you're betting that kind of work will be valuable decades from now. Yet our schools teach the opposite. Every class period lasts 45 minutes regardless of subject. Every student proceeds at the same pace. Universities tell you it doesn't matter what you study as long as you do it well. That's completely false. It does matter what you do. You should focus relentlessly on something you're good at doing, but before that, you must think hard about whether it will be valuable in the future. For the startup world, this means you should not necessarily start your own company. People who understand the power law hesitate more than others when founding a new venture. They know how tremendously successful they could become by joining the very best company while it's growing fast. You could have 100% equity in your own failure, or 0.01% of Google, worth over $35 million today. If you do start your own company, remember the power law. One market will probably be better than all others. One distribution strategy usually dominates all others. Time and decision-making themselves follow a power law, and some moments matter far more than others. In a power law world, you can't afford not to think hard about where your actions will fall on the curve. Normal people don't start billion-dollar companies. I know because I've worked with hundreds of founders and they're all different. Take the original PayPal team. Of the 6 founders, 4 had built bombs in high school. 5 were 23 or younger. 3 had escaped communist countries. Yupan from China, Luke Nosek from Poland, Max Lebchin from Ukraine. Building bombs wasn't exactly normal in those countries. My first conversation with Luke was about how he'd just signed up for cryonics. Max claimed to be without a country and proud of it. Russ Simmons had escaped from a trailer park to become a math prodigy. Only Ken Howery fit the stereotype of privilege. He was our sole Eagle Scout. But even Kenny's peers thought he was crazy to join us for 1/3 the salary a bank offered. Extreme founders aren't new. Look at history's mythological founders, Romulus and Remus, orphans who founded Rome. Romulus killed his brother for crossing the boundary he'd drawn. Lawmaker and lawbreaker, criminal and king, a self-contradictory insider, outsider. The pattern continues today. Where does it come from? Start with nature. Maybe extreme traits really are more common among founders. Add nurture. The environment shapes unusual people in unusual ways. Then there's the feedback loop. Successful founders become more extreme because everyone treats them as extreme. Consider Richard Branson. Was he born with that lion's mane hairstyle? Of course not. But as he cultivated extreme traits, kiteboarding with the naked supermodels, the media eagerly crowned him the Virgin King, the undisputed king of PR, even the Ice King when Virgin Atlantic served drinks with ice cubes shaped like his face. Celebrities are the same. We call them American royalty and give them titles. Elvis, the king of rock. Michael Jackson, the king of pop. Then we destroy them. Elvis died overweight on his toilet. Jackson transformed from beloved child star to reviled oddity. Britney shaved her head and lost her children. The cycle is ancient. Primitive societies needed scapegoats, someone to blame when things went wrong. Before execution, scapegoats were worshipped like gods. The Aztecs dressed sacrificial victims in fine clothes and feasted them royally before cutting out their hearts. Every king is a living god, and every god a murdered king. Modern founders are just scapegoats who've managed to delay their executions. The lesson for business is that we need founders. If anything, we should be more tolerant of founders who seem strange or extreme. We need unusual individuals to lead companies beyond mere incrementalism. The lesson for founders is that individual prominence and adulation can never be enjoyed except on the condition that it may be exchanged for individual notoriety and demonization at any moment. Above all, don't overestimate your own power. Founders are important not because they are the only ones whose work has value, but because a great founder can bring out the best work from everybody at his company. Lesson 8. Planning beats randomness daily. Success is never accidental, Jack Dorsey tweeted to his 2 million followers. The replies were vicious. Said all multimillionaire white men, one responded. We've become so uncomfortable with the idea of planning for success that we attack anyone who claims to have done it. Malcolm Gladwell, patron saint of the luck believers, writes that success results from a patchwork of lucky breaks and arbitrary advantages. Warren Buffett calls himself a member of the Lucky Sperm Club. Bill Gates claims he was lucky to be born with certain skills. Are they being humble? Are they lying? Or have we created a culture that can't accept the idea that anyone controls their own destiny? Think about the American attitude toward the future. In the 1950s, people welcomed big plans. A California schoolteacher named John Reber proposed to redesign the entire San Francisco Bay Area, build 2 huge dams, create massive freshwater lakes, reclaim 20,000 acres. Congress held hearings. The Army Corps of Engineers built a 1.5-acre scale model to test it. Can you imagine that happening today? A school teacher with a grand plan would be dismissed as a crank. Anyone powerful proposing massive changes would be derided for hubris. We've shifted from definite optimism to indefinite optimism. The definite optimist has a concrete plan for the future and works to make it happen. The indefinite optimist expects the future to be better but doesn't know how, so he won't make any specific plans. Look at what indefinite optimism has created. In finance, nobody knows what to do with money. Entrepreneurs sell companies to bankers who diversify into portfolios, which institutional investors diversify further into stocks. At no point does anyone know what to do with money in the real economy. In politics, politicians tailor their images to match pre-existing public opinion. Government has shifted from solving specific problems, atomic weapons, lunar exploration, to providing insurance, Medicare, Social Security. In philosophy, both John Rawls and Robert Nozick, supposed opposites, focused on process rather than results. Neither had any specific vision of the future. Even in life itself, we've given up looking for secrets about longevity in favor of probabilistic life tables. We know our statistical chances of dying each year, but have stopped searching for ways to extend life. The results of indefinite thinking. America saves nothing. Companies hoard cash because they don't know what to do with it. Baby boomers expect the future to take care of itself. Students assemble diverse resumes instead of mastering specific skills. China, by contrast, is definitely pessimistic. Every senior Chinese leader experienced famine as a child. When they look to the future, disaster is not an abstraction, so they save everything and copy everything that works, executing definite plans even if those plans aren't original. But the most successful companies are built by definite optimists. When Yahoo offered Facebook $1 billion in 2006, I thought we should consider it. Mark Zuckerberg walked into the board meeting and announced, "Okay guys, this is just a formality. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes. We're obviously not going to sell." He saw where he could take the company. Yahoo didn't. You are not a lottery ticket. Lesson 9. 7 questions. Determine success. Every business faces the same challenge: creating something valuable and capturing some of that value. Sounds simple, but most businesses fail at one or both. How can you avoid their fate? Answer 7 questions. 1. The engineering. Question: can you create breakthrough technology instead of incremental improvements? Your technology must be at least 10x better than its closest substitute. Anything less will be perceived as a marginal improvement and will be hard to sell. Solyndra developed cylindrical solar cells that were 1p as efficient as flat ones. They tried to compensate with mirrors, but you can't recover from a radically inferior starting point. 2. The timing. Question: is now the right time to start your particular business? Entering a slow-moving market can be good, but only with a definite plan to take it over. The Cleantech companies had none. SpectraWatt's CEO compared solar in 2008 to microprocessors in the 1970s. But Moore's law doesn't apply to solar. Bell Labs created the first silicon solar cell in 1954, and efficiency has improved only linearly since then. 3. The monopoly. Question: are you starting with a big share of a small market? Every clean tech executive talked about trillion-dollar markets. That's a terrible sign. Huge markets mean ruthless competition. You want to be a big fish in a small pond, then expand. PayPal started with just 20,000 eBay power sellers. Once we dominated that tiny market, we could expand. 4. The people. Question: do you have the right team? Never invest in a tech CEO that wears a suit. Real technologists wear t-shirts and jeans. Clean tech executives wore suits because they were good at raising capital and securing government subsidies, not building products customers wanted. Tesla's Elon Musk success story doesn't do suits. 5. the distribution. Question, do you have a way to not just create but deliver your product? Better Place spent $800 million on electric car infrastructure, but sold only 1,000 cars. Why? Customers had to get approval to buy, prove they lived near battery stations, promise predictable routes, sign up for subscriptions, and learn new behaviors. The technology might have been superior, but the distribution was impossible. The durability. Question, will your market position be defensible 10 and 20 years into the future? Every dead solar company blamed Chinese competition in their bankruptcy filings. But was that really impossible to predict? Cleantech entrepreneurs should have asked, what will stop China from wiping out my business? Without an answer, failure was inevitable. The secret question. Have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see? Every cleantech company justified itself with the same conventional truth. The world needs clean energy. But thousands of companies competing to satisfy an obvious need is a recipe for disaster. Tesla succeeded because it knew cleantech was as much about fashion as environment. Rich people wanted to appear green. So Tesla made cars that made drivers look cool, period. Score yourself honestly. If you nail all 7, you'll master fortune and succeed. 5 or 6 might work. Lesson 10. Sales hides from view. All salesmen are actors. Their priority is persuasion, not sincerity. That's why salesman is a slur. We react negatively to awkward, obvious salesmen, the bad ones. But here's the truth. Sales works best when hidden. And if you don't realize it's hidden, you've been sold. Like acting, sales works best when hidden. This explains why almost everyone whose job involves distribution has a job title that has nothing to do with it. People who sell advertising are account executives. People who sell customers work in business development. People who sell companies are investment bankers. People who sell themselves are politicians. There's a reason for these redescriptions. None of us wants to be reminded when we're being sold. Tom Sawyer didn't just convince his friends to whitewash the fence for him. He got them to pay him for the privilege. His friends were none the wiser. Not much has changed since Twain wrote in 1876. The engineer's grail is a product great enough that it sells itself. But anyone who would actually say this about a real product must be lying. Either he's delusional, lying to himself, or he's selling something, and thereby contradicting himself. Look at the hierarchy of distribution methods. Complex sales, 100 meters deals. Every detail requires close personal attention. It might take months to develop relationships. SpaceX sells billion-dollar contracts to NASA. Politics matters as much as technology. Palantir doesn't even have salespeople. CEO Alex Karp spends 25 days a month meeting clients because buyers want to talk to the CEO, not VP of sales. Personal sales, 10K, 100K. You need a process by which a modest sales team can move the product. Box started by selling to the Stanford Sleep Clinic. Small account, but it grew to Stanford-wide adoption. Starting big would have failed. Distribution doldrums, around 1K. No good distribution channel exists. Small businesses that need 1K software have no way to hear about it. Advertising is too broad or inefficient. Personal sales are too expensive. This dead zone kills companies. Marketing and advertising, low-priced products. Works only when customer acquisition costs and lifetime value make every other channel uneconomical. Warby Parker can afford TV commercials because eyeglasses have decent margins but don't go viral. Viral marketing, $0 marginal cost. Product functionality encourages users to invite friends. Facebook and PayPal grew this way. At PayPal, we paid people $10 to sign up and $10 for referrals. Expensive, but it led to 7% daily growth. We focused on eBay power sellers first because they had the highest transaction velocity. 2 critical insights. First, the power law applies to distribution. One channel will dominate all others. The kitchen sink approach, try everything, doesn't work. Poor sales rather than bad product is the most common cause of failure. Second, everybody sells. You must sell your company to employees and investors. You must sell your company to the media. Nerds who instinctively mistrust the media make the mistake of ignoring it. But what prospective employees find when they Google you will be critical to your success. Look around. If you don't see any salespeople, you're the salesperson. Lesson 11. Build your company. Cult. Let me paint you 2 pictures. Picture 1. An office with beanbag chairs, ping pong tables, free massages, on-site sushi chefs. Dogs and cats roam freely. Everyone loves their work. Nobody watches the clock. Picture 2. A cramped office where everyone wears the same t-shirt. They work 100-hour weeks. They're obsessed with one mission. They hang out only with each other. Which company succeeds? The second one. Every time. The first company has perks without substance. Company culture doesn't exist apart from the company itself. No company has a culture. Every company is a culture. A startup is a team of people on a mission, and a good culture is just what that looks like on the inside. Silicon Valley calls successful founding teams mafias. The PayPal mafia is legendary. Elon Musk founded SpaceX and Tesla. Reid Hoffman founded LinkedIn. Steve Chen, Chad Hurley, and Jawed Karim founded YouTube. Jeremy Stoppelman and Russell Simmons founded Yelp. David Sachs founded Yammer. I founded Palantir. Today, those 7 companies are worth over $200 billion. But we didn't assemble this team by sorting resumes and hiring the most talented people. I had seen that approach fail at my New York law firm. Impressive individuals who spent all day together but had nothing to say to each other outside work. Taking a merely professional view of the workplace, in which free agents check in and out on a transactional basis, is worse than cold. It's not even rational. Since time is your most valuable asset, it's odd to spend it working with people who don't envision any long-term future together. From the start, I wanted PayPal to be tightly knit instead of transactional. We hired people who would actually enjoy working together. They had to be talented, but even more than that, they had to be excited about working specifically with us. Recruiting is a core competency. Never outsource it. The first 4 or 5 employees might be attracted by equity or responsibility, but why should the 20th employee join your company? Here are bad answers everybody gives. Your stock options will be worth more here. You'll get to work with the smartest people. You can help solve the world's most challenging problems. What's wrong with valuable stock, smart people, or pressing problems? Nothing. But every company makes these same claims, so they won't help you stand out. Good answers are specific to your company. At PayPal, if you were excited by the idea of creating a new digital currency to replace the US dollar, we wanted to talk to you. If not, you weren't the right fit. Max Levchin says startups should make their early staff as personally similar as possible. Startups have limited resources and small teams. They must work quickly and efficiently to survive, and that's easier when everyone shares an understanding of the world. The early PayPal team worked well together because we were all the same kind of nerd. We all loved science fiction. Cryptonomicon was required reading, and we preferred the capitalist Star Wars to the communist Star Trek. From the outside, everyone in your company should be different in the same way. A tribe of like-minded people fiercely devoted to the company's mission. On the inside, everyone should be sharply distinguished by their work. At PayPal, I made every person responsible for doing just one thing. Every employee's one thing was unique, and everyone knew I would evaluate him only on that one thing. The best startups might be considered slightly less extreme kinds of cults. The biggest difference is that cults tend to be fanatically wrong about something important. People at successful startups are fanatically right about something those outside it have missed. Better to be called a cult, or even a mafia. Lesson 12, computers complement, not compete. In 1997, IBM's Deep Blue defeated world chess champion Garry Kasparov. In Tyquis's 11, Watson beat Jeopardy's best contestant Ken Jennings. Today, Google's self-driving cars cruise California roads. The Guardian worries that they could drive the next wave of unemployment. Everyone assumes computers will replace humans. Futurists rejoice. Luddites despair. But both sides miss the fundamental truth. Computers are complements for humans, not substitutes. Let me tell you how I learned this. In mid-2000, PayPal was growing fast but bleeding money, losing over 10 million monthly to credit card fraud. We were processing hundreds of transactions per minute, too many for human review. So, we did what any engineers would do. We tried to automate. Max Levchin assembled elite mathematicians to study fraudulent transfers. We wrote software to automatically identify and cancel bogus transactions in real time, but it quickly became clear this wouldn't work. After an hour or two, thieves would adapt and change tactics. The fraudsters' adaptive evasions fooled our automatic detection algorithms, but we found they didn't fool our human analysts as easily. So, Max rewrote the software to take a hybrid approach. The computer would flag the most suspicious transactions on a well-designed user interface, and human operators would make the final judgment. Thanks to this hybrid system, we named it Igor, after the Russian fraudster who bragged we'd never stop him. We turned our first quarterly profit in the first quarter of 2002. The FBI asked to use Igor to help detect financial crime, and Max could boast, grandiosely but truthfully, that he was the Sherlock Holmes of the Internet underground. This symbiosis saved PayPal, which in turn enabled hundreds of thousands of small businesses to accept online payments. None of it would have been possible without the man-machine hybrid, even though most people never saw or heard about it. The lesson stayed with me. When I pitched Palantir in 2003, the core insight was using the human-computer hybrid approach from PayPal's security system to identify terrorist networks and financial fraud. We already knew the FBI was interested. Today, Palantir is worth over $20 billion. Why does human-computer symbiosis work so well? Because humans and computers are good at fundamentally different things. Humans have intentionality, complex judgment, moral reasoning, creativity. Computers have processing power, perfect memory, tireless execution, pattern recognition. Men and machines are more different from each other than any two people are different from each other. People compete for jobs and resources. Computers compete for neither. When a cheap laptop beats the smartest mathematicians at some tasks, but even a supercomputer with 16,000 CPUs can't beat a child at others, you can tell that humans and computers are not just more or less powerful than each other. They are categorically different. Think about what professionals really do. Lawyers must articulate solutions to thorny problems in several different ways. Doctors need to marry clinical understanding with communication to patients. Teachers must understand how to tailor instruction to different individuals' interests and learning styles. Computers might be able to do some of these tasks, but they can't combine them effectively. Better technology in law, medicine, and education won't replace professionals. It will allow them to do even more. LinkedIn didn't try to replace recruiters. They empowered them. Now, 97% of recruiters use LinkedIn to find candidates. The network created value for the hundreds of millions of professionals who use it and the recruiters who search it. The most valuable companies in the future won't ask what problems can be solved with computers alone. Instead, they'll ask, how can computers help humans solve hard problems? Lesson 13. Good intentions guarantee failure. At the start of the 21st century, everyone agreed the next big thing was clean technology. Beijing's smog was so thick, people couldn't see building to building. Bangladesh suffered the biggest mass poisoning in history from arsenic-laden wells. Al Gore implored us to attack these problems with the urgency and resolve that has previously been seen only when nations mobilized for war. Entrepreneurs started thousands of clean tech companies. Investors poured in over $50 billion. It was the biggest phenomenon in the history of social entrepreneurship. It failed spectacularly. Solyndra is the most famous disaster, but over 40 solar manufacturers went bankrupt in 2012 alone. The clean tech bubble was bigger than the dot-com bubble by some measures, and its crash was more devastating. Why? Because clean tech entrepreneurs confused social utility with business value. They believed that an overwhelming social need for alternative energy implied an overwhelming business opportunity. They were wrong. Every clean tech company justified itself with the same conventional truth. The world needs clean energy. They competed to satisfy this obvious need. But when thousands of undifferentiated companies compete for one broad goal, it's a recipe for disaster. Remember the 7 questions every business must answer? Clean tech companies typically scored 0. Engineering? Solyndra's cylindrical cells were actually worse than flat panels. Most improvements were incremental at best. Timing. They believed their hour had arrived because it felt right, not because of any technical breakthrough. Monopoly. Every executive bragged about entering trillion-dollar markets. Huge markets mean bloody competition. People? Real technologists wear t-shirts and jeans. Clean tech executives wore suits. They were salesmen, not builders. Distribution? Better Place spent $800 million on infrastructure, but sold only 1,000 cars, because buying one required jumping through endless hoops. Durability? Nobody asked, what will stop China from wiping out my business? China wiped them out. Secrets? There were no secrets. Everyone agreed clean energy was important. When everyone agrees, you have convention, not opportunity. Social entrepreneurs aim to combine the best of both worlds. Do well by doing good. Usually they end up doing neither. The ambiguity between social and financial goals doesn't help. But the bigger problem is the ambiguity in the word social itself. If something is socially good, is it good for society or merely seen as good by society? Whatever is good enough to receive applause from all audiences can only be conventional. Progress doesn't come from conventional thinking. Doing something different is what's truly good for society, and it's also what allows a business to profit by monopolizing a new market. The best projects are likely to be overlooked, not trumpeted by a crowd. The best problems to work on are often the ones nobody else even tries to solve. Tesla is one of the few clean tech companies thriving today. They rode the social buzz better than anyone, but they succeeded because they answered all 7 questions correctly. Most importantly, they had a secret. They knew clean tech was as much about fashion as environment. Rich people wanted to appear green, even if it meant driving a boxy Prius or clunky Honda Insight. So, Tesla decided to build cars that made drivers look cool, period. Leonardo DiCaprio ditched his Prius for an expensive Tesla Roadster. While generic clean tech companies struggled to differentiate themselves, Tesla built a unique brand around the secret that clean tech was even more of a social phenomenon than an environmental imperative. The lesson? Missions don't create monopolies. Secrets do. We've reached the end of our journey from 0 to 1. But really, this is just the beginning. Your beginning. Nick Bostrom describes 4 possible futures for humanity: recurrent collapse, endless cycles of rise and ruin. Plateau, the whole world reaches developed country living standards and stops extinction. We destroy ourselves. Takeoff, we create new technology for a dramatically better future. Which will it be? Recurrent collapse seems unlikely. Our knowledge is too widespread for complete darkness to return. And if extinction happens, there's no future to consider. Most people today expect plateau, a future that looks like the present but with more people living like Americans. But even if global plateau were possible, could it last? When everyone competes for the same resources with the same technology, stagnation leads to conflict, and conflict risks extinction. That leaves the 4th option, using new technology to create a dramatically better future. But no matter how many trends you trace, the future won't happen on its own. What the singularity prophets miss is that we face a stark choice between 2 most likely scenarios: nothing or something. It's up to us. Remember the contrarian question we started with? What important truth do very few people agree with you on? Here's my answer. Most people think the future of the world will be defined by globalization. But the truth is that technology matters more. Without technological change, if China doubles its energy production over the next 2 decades, it will also double its air pollution. If every one of India's hundreds of millions of households were to live the way Americans already do, using only today's tools, the result would be environmentally catastrophic. Spreading old ways to create wealth around the world will result in devastation, not riches. In a world of scarce resources, globalization without new technology is unsustainable. But there's a deeper contrarian truth. We cannot take for granted that the future will be better. That means we need to work to create it today. Whether we achieve the singularity on a cosmic scale is perhaps less important than whether we seize the unique opportunities we have to do new things in our own working lives. Everything important to us, the universe, the planet, the country, your company, your life, and this very moment, is singular. Our task today is to find singular ways to create the new things that will make the future not just different, but better, to go from 0 to 1. The essential first step is to think for yourself. Only by seeing our world anew, as fresh and strange as it was to the ancients who saw it first, can we both recreate it and preserve it for the future. You are not a lottery ticket. The future is not a lottery. The future is something we create. So here's your homework. Answer the contrarian question. What important truth do very few people agree with you on? What are you going to build based on that truth? Because the future won't create itself, and somewhere out there is a secret waiting for someone brave enough to look.